welcome to the Dizzy Skeleton. I'm DK, and today we're going to be finishing our look at Taldorei Reborn. Now, I already reviewed the first couple of chapters of the book where it explained the lore and role-playing in Taudouri. The later chapters here are going to explain some of the character options, as well as the DM's toolkit. So let's go ahead and take a look. Alright, so like I said, we left off here at chapter 4, character options. So I like how they kind of have their own party set up. It's something that Pathfinder has done in the past, where they have their iconic kind of characters. They've done the same thing here with Taudouri, so these are a few of the party members. Just going back to show you, they are some of the embossed characters here on the front of the book. Going into chapter 4 here, it lists here how to kind of play in Taldorei, how to build a character, so the Ancestries, what they call the races here, which I like a lot better. The Ancestry, so humans, elves, dwarves, goblins, tieflings, and dragon blood are their most common. They also go into the classes here, so it lists all of the subclasses. Now some of these may be familiar or read as familiar from some of the characters that have been in some of the Critical Role shows. They've taken those homebrew subclasses and they've transferred them into this book, so I really enjoy that. We also have a couple of backgrounds here, including the Ashari Whitestone Rifle Corps. So here it lists a session 0. I think every book should have a session 0 in it. Doesn't really matter which book, but I think all of the books should at least say something about the session 0 and how to bring up the book that the section of session 0 is in, as well as what it can do to your campaign. Alright, so here in the book they go through the races and cultures, and then looking at the people across Taldorei. So I'll just show the next page here. We have the Dwarves. They're kind of just showing what the Dwarves do, the Craghammer Dwarves, and how they're different from the Hill Dwarves or the Duergar of the Ember Hold. Now they do this for all of the races that are included in Taldorei, and they kind of just show off exactly what their culture is and how they kind of fit in to all of Taldorei. Another thing that they did that I haven't seen any other publisher do or any other kind of book do is talk about mixed ancestry. Not only just half orcs and half elves that are listed or statted out, but they also go into a description of how to create or build other kinds of elf, dragon blood, or orc, dwarf, different kinds of ancestries, and put them together. So here they just recommend you can just swap around one of the racial traits for another one, depending on which race you pick. So say you pick elf, but you are part dragon blood, you would just go over to the dragonborn. Maybe you switch out the high elf cantrip selection for dragon breath. It may seem a little bit overpowered, but it's kind of your house rule or how you want to take care of it in your game. So it's really up to you. Some of that session 0 stuff that they were talking about in the beginning of this section here. On the facing page here, it goes in to describe Hemocraft. So 2 of the subclasses in here have to deal with the Hemocraft. This is similar to the Blood Hunter, which they don't have in this book, which is a little disappointing. But it is something that they discuss. So talking about blood in your session 0, because there is self-harm that happens within those classes. And then it just goes through and just discusses the blood and things about blood. So it's something you want to go over in your session 0 probably if you're going to have Hemocraft in your campaign or be using these. If you're a player, you're going to want to bring it up to your DM before just bringing in a blood domain cleric to be playing in the game. And then I'm going to go ahead and just look at a couple of the subclasses here. I'm not going to go in great detail like I usually do. I'll just do an overview of exactly what it is they are. So we're looking at a barbarian here, Path of the Juggernaut. Now this barbarian does something different than any other barbarian. It's pretty hard, I feel like, to get the barbarian subclasses to do different things. They're all based on this rage and then some kind of effect from their rage. They did something cool with the Path of the Juggernaut, and it allows it to kind of do control around the battlefield. So you can't be knocked prone or moved against your will, and then you are able to move people around the battlefield. So you can run into people, you can move them here. Once you get to 10th level, you can push a creature up to 10 feet when you hit it with a melee attack while you're raging. That's pretty powerful to be moving people around, especially as a barbarian. Yeah, it's usually something given to a caster, kind of the control, crowd control abilities that would allow you to move around the battlefield. On the facing page here, we have the College of Tragedy. So it's kind of the emotional, sorrowful kind of bard, if you want to be real tragic about everything. You know, he's got this typical stance here for the drama. And then the College of Tragedy does reflect that. So you're kind of turning good things into bad things, or bad things into good things, depending kind of on what you're doing here. Their manipulation with the dice is kind of what they're all about here. The cleric got 2 domains, as if the cleric needs any more domains, but they did get 2. So we kind of have the blood domain here. Like I was talking about earlier, you're going to want to check with your DM to see about playing the blood domain. And then it's giving some very, blood puppet, so kind of dominating, using blood in kind of a, it says that it doesn't have to be necessarily evil, but it's definitely borderline. Here it says clerics of good gods use Hemocraft to fill their self-sacrifice with purpose and power. So it can be used in a good manner. It's not necessarily death domain in nature. So the second cleric domain here is the moon domain. There is two moons, Catha and Rudius, over Exandria, so it's only right that they would most likely have a moon domain. Now, when I initially heard of this, I thought it was going to be something similar to the Twilight domain, stacking up on that, but those things are 2 different things, so why wouldn't the cleric domains? Looking at some of the abilities here, just even the blessing of the blood-drenched moon is pretty good. For 10 minutes, the blessed creature has advantage, so one of your allies has advantage rolls against a target if at least one of the blessed creature's allies is within 5 feet of it. So I mean, this is automatic sneak attack for your rogue if you're not already using those kinds of abilities, the flanking and whatnot. But this is just a really good ability in general. Gets another channel divinity here, empowered cantrips, and then it has the Eclipse of the Ill Omen. Now this hasn't shown up in anything that I know of Critical Role, but it's a pretty cool idea. Facing to that is they also give us a druid here, so Circle of the Blighted. It's pretty interesting. It's another take kind of on the necromantic, similar to the Circle of Spores. It kind of takes, instead of the fungus kind of approach, it goes to the blighted, so the kind of deadwood approach. So you're getting a blighted sapling. Your creatures that you conjure are blighted, so they have immunities to necrotic and poison, so it makes them stronger. So it seems like it is some kind of a summoning type subclass. It just does it in a different way. You get Call of the Shadow Seed, so you get these blighted saplings here. So here, the Monk, the Way of the Cobalt. So one would think that they would have dropped this in the Explorer's Guide to Wildmount, but it at the time might have not been ready for playtest. We may have seen its original playtest in Season 2, Campaign 2 of Critical Role, played by Marisha. She played Bo, the Cobalt Soul Monk. So it's pretty specific in, it's not just the moon or blood domain, it's the way of the Cobalt Soul. So the Cobalt Soul is an actual faction within Exandria. So if you know anything about it, they're kind of detectives. They do book work. So then the subclass reflects that, extorting truth. The last one was here, extracting aspects. So you're getting information out of the people kind of as you beat them. It's almost an interrogation monk that you're playing with here. It seems like it's a pretty good subclass. When Marisha was playing it, it seemed like it was fairly interesting. I kind of like the book monk or the library monk, putting them kind of into that knowledgeable position. After that is another subclass that we've seen grow in Campaign 2 of Critical Role, the Oath of the Open Sea. Now this is one that's a little bit interesting because it is a paladin, and the paladin's oaths usually are to an ideal. I understand that the open sea is kind of a freedom. Here it says the thrill of limitless horizon. So I guess I understand kind of where they're coming from. It just seems a little more specific than most of the other oath subclasses that are for the paladin. Now the Oath of the Open Sea, it was, spoilers here, but Travis played Ford in that campaign. In the late game he took up levels of paladin. This is the subclass that they created for him because he was kind of this pirate warlock when he started out, and this just kind of doubled up on all of that kind of open sea-ness that he was going for. So here we're getting things like destroy and create water. Freedom of the Waves is a new spell, and Freedom of the Winds is a new spell here that are just after this subclass. So we're looking at some of the channel divinities. Marine Layer was used quite often by Ford in the campaign. So it kind of makes a fog cloud around him, but anyone within 5 feet of him can treat it as lightly obscured so they can still see through it. And then, like I said here at the end of the class, the subclass, rather, it has the Oath of the Open Sea spells here. So we're looking at the Freedom of the Waves. You're able to create a wave. It does a little bit of damage. And then we have the Freedom of the Winds, which allows you to gain a flying speed as a 5th level spell. It's actually not bad. I mean, if you're looking for something that's different than just the fly, you're going to get 60 feet of speed there. And you also have advantage on ability checks to avoid being grappled, and saving throws against being restrained or paralyzed. So it's essentially a better fly spell before you get into the really high level stuff where it allows you to fly. And then next here, I have not made it through all of Campaign 1, but I do know that there is a Sorcerer Rune Child. So here we're given another example of a Rune Child and exactly what that is. So they're using the runes here, the weave and the flow of magic to become a sorcerer, essentially, and using these runes to do runic type magic. So here we go, we got to have sorcerer spell list, something that's not on all of the sorcerers, but this one included it, thankfully. And it's just really giving you these kind of glyphs and runes that you're able to use to kind of buff or rather debuff in different situations. And then finally here we have the wizard. So we have the blood magic wizard. We're doing more of the blood thing here. So we're just using blood magic or using spells to do things. Most likely going to be necromantic in damage. Here you can, when you take damage, use your reaction to deal some damage. So this blood thing, I'm not too sure of it. but it seems interesting. Like I said, I'm surprised they didn't put the Blood Hunter in here with all the blood magic that they have. You can get the Blood Hunter for free on the Dungeon Masters Guild, so maybe that's why they didn't release it here. But I mean, if it's already free, I don't see why not just throwing it in the book and giving us that full class published. So I'm not going to spend too much time on the backgrounds. It's the next section here. Just looking at the Ashari as an example. So it gives a nice description on exactly what it means to be an Ashari and what they are to Taudouri. Of course, you get your mechanical abilities here. Your feature, which normally only have one, but in this case you have 4 different features depending on which Ashari you are a part of. And then the suggested characteristics as normal. It's currently pretty popular right now as Liam's playing a warrior for the Ashari, and then previously in campaign 1, Keyleth was the voice of the Tempest, was also an Ashari. So they just really allow to bring in the factions is really the backgrounds here, instead of being something generic. They've kind of built in. The Ashari isn't in a class, but how can you get it as a background and how does it make sense? So, I mean, the rest of them are the class member, the Whitestone Rifle Corps, so just things that are around Taudouri that are more factions that you would be a part of. They give you the description on how you're related to them, and then some of the proficiencies and abilities that would come with, being part of that faction. So I think they did a nice job with the backgrounds here. There's only 5 of them, not too many, but at least they're included. So I just wanted to pause real quick on the feats. These are the new feats, just a few of them. There's 2 that I thought were very interesting that I think people have been asking for a long time. The first one being Mystic Conflux. So you possess an intuitive understanding of the way magic ebbs and flows within enchanted items. Such items attune easily to you, and you are able to sound out their secrets. So you gain the Identify spell without expending a spell slot. You can do that once a long rest. But the big part here is you can attune up to 4 magic items. So this grants you that extra slot that I've heard people in my own groups ask for another slot. But I think it's something all around that a lot of people have been asking for or trying to do. Here in this book, they finally have published a way. I think the feat is pretty fair. In the high levels, it's definitely going to get abused, but lower down, I think it's not too bad. The secondary thing I thought a lot of people would be interested in is the Thrown Arms Master. So here you get the increase to strength of dexterity, simple martial melee weapons, without the thrown property have the thrown property, so you can really turn anything into a thrown weapon. It increases the range of thrown weapons. It's something that I think people have also wanted, being able to expand the throw-in abilities and become a real thrower of objects. I think is something that some people have asked for. So I mean, having it in this book, it means that Critical Role is really listening to the people out there. I mean, I don't know anyone in the campaigns that have either of these 2 as homebrew feats that Matt has just given out willingly. So the fact that they've taken the time afterwards to go through and figure out a couple of feats, I mean, we only have a few here, but I know these 2 are pretty interesting that I would use. All right, so Chapter 5 here is the Game Master's Toolkit. Chapter 5 here is the Game Master's Toolkit, so we're just looking at some of the options and things that the DMs can add into their game. So it goes over creating adventures, how to kind of flow an adventure. So, I mean, more information really than Dungeon Master's Guide honestly gives, going with the flow. Something, I mean, Matt usually does whenever the players in his game kind of go off the rails. And it just gives you kind of a look at how to structure a game, especially playing in Taudouri, and how the stories of Taudouri are kind of formed, so you can create your own kind of, dare I say, Critical Role experience. So looking at the next section here, we're looking at magic items. I'm just going to go through a couple real quick. The Boots of Haste is one in here. Cataclysm bolts. I know there's a few that are shown in the game. So Magician's Judge. When I heard of it, I thought maybe it was a specific blade, but apparently it's just one of many. There's also the Tinker Top Bolt Blaster 1000. It's a little ridiculous, but apparently it's in here, as well as a very rare weapon, hand crossbow. So we've arrived at the Vestiges of Divergence. So it explains exactly what they are, how to advance the vestige. So it's really a dungeon master's option to advance it. There isn't any mechanical requirement that you can do, or any way you can really do it in the game. Statistically, it's really just up to kind of the dungeon master to use some of the examples here of moments that would trigger the advancement of the vestige. It does say down here kind of how to balance them, but I mean, they don't really have that on them. It's kind of just really up to you. There's no level requirement for anything. So there are many in here. There's one for almost every god that's in here, but I just wanted to look at a few that would be known to the public. So here we have Star Razor. If you're unfamiliar with Star Razor, I don't want to spoil anything for you, but just know that there is a half-orc somewhere in Wildmount currently wielding Star Razor. Then it just goes through the dormant phase, so exactly whatever of its abilities originally, if you awaken it or you have exalted it. It gets more powerful as you go. We've seen something similar in the Vault of Magic, so I have a review for that. If you go back and look at that, there's also some fabled magic items that kind of follow the same thing, but those are level based, whereas these are kind of dungeon master specific. So here on the facing page we have Whisper. So it even says here it was once wielded by Vax'ildan, a legendary champion of the Matron of Ravens. So if you're playing in the game, or you have players in your game that are playing in Taudouri, I mean, you can give some of these items away. They have items that are, you know, shown in the games. If you're really trying to create a game that's similar to Critical Role, or you really like the things that were in Critical Role, you want to see some of the NPCs, I'll get to it here in a bit, from Critical Role. All those things can be included. They have statted all those things out for you. You can add them to your campaign. So here's some optional campaign rules. So basically here is what it's saying is the rules that Matt Mercer has basically homebrewed into the Critical Role campaign. So some accelerated rests, so 10 minutes if you can have a 10-minute short rest, and then the resurrection rules. So if you've watched his campaigns, and you know he has resurrection rules, and it goes through here. This house rule is used in Critical Role live stream to increase the emotional stakes of bringing a beloved friend back from the dead. So it goes through exactly what his rules are, Matt Mercer's that is, and exactly what it does when you do resurrect a fellow companion. Taxing return, so it kind of just adds these different abilities, different rules that you can add to your campaign. If, like I said, you're really trying to get that Critical Role campaign feeling, you can use all of the rules that they do use in the live stream. So Chapter 6, Allies and Adversaries of Taudouri. It's the last chapter here in the book. It starts off by looking at the non-player creatures, and it's just listing and kind of giving you information and lore about each of the creatures and types of different creatures that you can find in Taudouri, and how they're changed from the standard monster manual or other bestiary that they would come out of, but how they are played or represented and shown in Taudouri. So, I mean, Aboleth, Catfolk, you're looking at centaurs, dragons, the Fae, a bunch of different things. And then later in the chapter here is going to be the NPCs. Alright, so here's some of the NPCs that they have. They have some other creatures in here as well, but here we're just looking at some of the Ashari. So we have the Ashari Fire Tamer, the Ashari Sky Dancer. So it's looking at NPCs, you know, that are the Ashari in different factions. They have the other ones here, Stone Child, and then it's going to be the Wave Rider. So we have some information, a couple paragraphs, and then just a stat block. They're pretty high CRs, it's not too bad. 7 CR, it's a fairly strong Ashari member. So we have some extra golems here, so Mage Hunter Golem, Platinum Golem. It looks like they've just, I don't remember seeing these in Critical Role, so it looks like they've added creatures kind of here and there. I mean, I could be wrong, and they could be in Critical Role somewhere. I haven't completed all of Campaign 1, and they may be something in Campaign 2 I just don't know the name of because they didn't use the name in the live stream. Either way, I mean, we're looking at some pretty powerful foes here, Challenge 15, Challenge 16. But it's nice to have different things, especially like these automatons if you're playing in a more cyberpunk or Magitech type universe or game. Then you may have some more of these golem type creatures. So before we move on to the NPCs in Vox Machina themselves, I thought this picture right here of the Centaur skeleton, and then following that the Centaur skeleton stat block, were pretty cool. I mean, the one's holding his own head, and then here in the stat block, we're looking at a CR2, and then there's also the flaming skeletons, which are here. And I think this picture is pretty cool as well. So the art in this book is superb. I mean, the visual here, I wish it was almost a full page just showing that and how ridiculous it really is. So briefly, I will pass on each of the members of Vox Machina. I don't want to miss anyone that anyone would want me to take a look at. Now, I don't want to spend too much time. If you really like these or you think this is really interesting, go buy the book. I mean, I've already gone through the whole book. You can basically see everything I've looked at, and I picked out a lot of the things that I thought were really cool. But this here, I mean, this may be the pull that gets in a lot of people to buy this book right here. So Vox Machina gives you the description here. If you're unfamiliar, they were the adventuring group. They were the player characters of Campaign 1 for the live stream of Critical Role. If you're interested in that, go back and listen to it. You can see how all these characters got to exactly where they are. So we got Grog Strongjaw here. You got Keyleth, the voice of the Tempest. So we're all looking at CR 18s right now, so pretty powerful individual characters. You know, I mean, here it even says they're 20th level spellcaster, plus I'm sure they have some extra abilities that they had given them to make them a little bit more powerful. Something that may interest a lot of people is the Derolo family, so we're looking at all the Derolos here, Percy and Vex, and then all of their children. You can see here, if you know anything about Percy, you know why he has a tiefling daughter there. It gives all the names here on the nameplate. I just really like how they did a photo, a family photo, with trinket included here. So Pike Trickfoot, played by Ashley Johnson. I wasn't too sure on this character originally. She seems like she doesn't really much fit. I'm still in the process of Critical Role, the first campaign, so we'll see how it turns out. Scanlan, kind of this ridiculous pose with this ridiculous picture, but I guess that is Scanlan. A little bit weaker than the other ones. It's interesting. Tyrion Darrington, if you know anything about Tyrion Darrington, it's interesting. He's an interesting character. He's an interesting fellow. I kind of like that they threw him in here. He's a part of Vox Machina after all, but you know, not an original or one of the really well-known members. And then here, overpowering all of the other characters, is the Champion of Ravens. They don't even call him by his name here, but you do know this is Vax'ildan. And then here at the end of the book we have an index. So I miss having indexes in some of the other books. They used to have it in 3.5. All of the books had an index at the back, but it's rare to see that now in the books that they have out. So it's nice to have that. You can go right to the back and find exactly what you're looking for. Another superb thing that they did was not only did they use artists, a lot of them are actually artists that I've seen in the Critical Role live streams. At the beginning and in the middle break, they show art from fan art from people kind of around the world. So I'm not sure if all of these people that they have on here were, you know, contracted and then made the art, or if they had made the art and then Critical Role reached out to them. I'm thinking the latter, because a lot of these are just like Twitter handles and kind of just, you know, they look like they're just fans, kind of, that they've asked for the art basically to do so. I mean, there's really only one like real company here. A few people have art stations set up, but I mean, a lot of them are just kind of just Twitter handles that they're using. So I appreciate that they did that. They didn't just throw them in a list of names, but they actually sorted everyone's out, gave you the page number that their art is on, exactly where to go and find them. This is Critical Role for you. And that's going to finish the book here on the back, and just kind of describes what's in this book with an MSRP of $49.99. Alright, that's going to finish our look at Taldorei Reborn. Looking at it, it's a great campaign setting. I personally probably won't play in the campaign setting, but I will use a lot of the inspiration that's here in the book. Obviously the character options are something I'm really looking forward to. And overall, I think it's a great book. If you're a fan of Critical Role, you should go ahead and pick it up. Alright, and thanks for watching today. If you could go ahead and like and subscribe down below. If you want to watch my last book review, you can look at it here. My last miniature review right over here.